Okay, so good evening, Indrani.
Very good evening, Rajiv.
How have you been?
Fantastic, absolutely stunning. 2021 have started with a very positive note, and I'm very excited to see how it unfolds.
Lovely. And 2021 is starting with an event that you're doing with me on books, and it's going to be exciting because
Absolutely.
season two is starting after the successful completion of season one. We have
Hmm.
40 leaders in season two, and you are the one starting it off for us. So thank you so much joining the
Oh,
book.
really? So I'm the first one this year. Thank you
Oh,
so much.
yes,
Thank
yes,
you so
yes.
much.
You play the role of the engine, and the entire train is going to get pulled for the next 2 months.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Lovely. So before we get started and talk on the powerful book, let me have the honor of introducing you to the audience. So, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whichever part of the world all of you are. Uh, Welcome to season two. After listening to me and very many guests in season one of Leaders and Libraries by the Leadership Elements, today we have our first guest of season two, Miss Indrani Chatterjee, Chief People Officer for the group Allcargo Logistics. She comes with 20 plus years of rich experience across the areas of FMCG, telecom, manufacturing, logistics, etc. She is a TEDx speaker, a Marshall Goldsmith certified executive coach. Wow. And you can see her regularly on forums as guest if you are somebody who's active on LinkedIn. She's all over on multiple forums. She talks on leadership, she talks on employee engagement, she talks on culture building, she talks on women empowerment, and multiple such powerful topics of the day which are important. And thank you for doing that, Indrani, so beautifully. Plus, she's also a book lover. So thank you so much for joining the force, Indrani. Welcome to season two.
Thank you so much, Rajiv. I think you have been really kind with me with all the lovely words. Yeah, I love addressing people in various forums, and my topic is extremely vast, as you must have followed in the LinkedIn. And I
Yes.
have been doing that for last, I think, like 7, 8 years now.
Wow.
TEDx was definitely a turning point in my career. I felt very humbled to be invited to the TEDx platform. But let me tell you, Rajiv, this is the first time I am having a discussion with you on books.
Woohoo!
Uh, yeah. So
I'm excited.
the moment you told me about the topic and you said that it is related to books, I felt that this is something that I have never done that. So I definitely should give it a try. So
Superb,
yeah.
superb. That's so exciting. So thank you so much for joining in. Let's get started. So I'm just rubbing my hands to create some heat and energy. And please do it on your side also. And we are today talking about a very powerful book. And I've got the book kept next to me. I'm going to show it on the screen. Before we get started, the first question to you, Indrani. Tell me how early association with books started for you.
So I have to be very honest. I have been I have been associated with books from a very early age. Okay,
Mhm.
because I don't want to disclose my age, but I come from an age where we don't did not have any internet, we didn't have Insta and FBs. We had books, we had libraries.
Oh, yes.
I have spent my growing up years in hostel. Okay, and a major
Mm.
part of that was spent in the libraries
Mhm.
and also with radios.
Oh,
Uh,
lovely.
so which is music. So books and music continues to be my favorite go-to thing when I am really down.
Beautiful.
So yeah, I just can't recollect, but should be somewhere when I was in my kindergarten.
Fantastic. And I have grown up in the West Bengal. I'm a born South Indian, but a brought up North Indian. So I've grown up with all the Bengalis for many years. And I'm assuming safely that Kishore Kumars of the world are surely part of the music of yours.
Yes. Bengalis are very culturally active.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
be it
Yeah.
poetry, be it music, be it
Literature.
literature, theater, name it,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we are there. We don't have
Oh,
jobs. We don't have jobs in Bengal. So we have.
you guys are so creative that नौकरी कभी कम पड़ जाते तो बड़े बड़े creative काम कर लेते हो, so that's good
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
Interesting. So tell me, Indrani, as you started reading from a very young age and you moved on in age and started going with the books, how did books play a very significant role in evolving you as a leader? Give us some thought on that.
So I would say, Rajiv, books had a very big influence on me. Okay. As I told you, I stayed in hostel, in boarding, for a very, very big period of my growing up years. Didn't have television. So the entertainment was definitely, apart from friends, definitely was like books and the radio, which was only given on weekends. So those were the times when the romantic novels made me hopeless romantic.
Yeah.
I started believing all those characters. So until today, till today I believe in fairy tales.
So sweet.
Yeah, so I do believe in fairy tales. Um, so during my growing up years, it was more of romantic novels, crime thrillers, yeah, but more around. I would love to read love stories, if I have to be very honest. Agatha Christie was good, but I was more inclined towards anything that was romantic novel. When I went to college, I started reading more Bengali books. In school, I did not read that much Bengali books. In college, I started enjoying Bengali literature
Beautiful.
more than English, because I was feeling that, and there was a change in me, and I was like feeling very connected to the Bengali literature. I studied a part of my college life in Shantiniketan, which is the ashram of Ravindranath Tagore.
Yes.
Maybe that had a big influence on my life, and it still has. And Bengali books, Bengali literature, it's not only about Ravindranath Tagore, I have read almost all of it, but all the contemporary writers also had a very big impact on my life.
Fantastic.
Gangopathay was one of them. Yeah, Sunil Gangopathay, and I was fortunate to meet Sunil Gangopathay on various occasions. So, but then when I stepped into the corporate world, I have to be very honest, it was more management books and self-help. I also started reading a lot of spiritual books from very early age, which is not very normal. I remember reading Vedanta treaties. I don't know whether you have heard about Vedanta treaties. I think I have finished Vedanta treaties when I was in college. At that time, it was not very common to read Vedanta treaties, but I was always inclined towards spiritual books as well, which actually gave me a lot of strength. So when I stepped into corporate world, as I was telling you, the management books helped me a lot. It shaped me a lot. It gave me different perspectives, and it I would say I would encourage people to go to books, go to the hard copies, rather than surfing the net. I don't know, somehow if you are reading a hard copy book, it registers more in your brain. I
It
think
does. It
it's
does.
a psychological thing, but yeah, I'm very much influenced with management books, very
Fantastic.
much.
So when I first spoke to you, I knew that you are an avid reader and you read a lot, and we're going to talk about one powerful book today. But I didn't know the Mills and Bones side of Indrani, which is very interesting, fascinating to know.
Honestly, Rajiv, I was not a MB kind of person. Okay, I'm still not. Okay, so switch on and switch off is something that I do not enjoy. I am a person who would love to. I don't know whether you have read books like Daddy Longlegs, Rebecca. So these are the books which I read in school, which had definitely a very very big impact on me, and I started feeling that that's what love is all about.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Mills and Bones is very very shallow for me.
Anyway, from the romantic books to spiritual books to self-help management books, and today you are a group chief people's officer for a great organization. So tell me, what made you pick this book today, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People? That's such a powerful book. What made you pick this? I'm so excited to talk about this.
So Rajiv, as I told you, I think by now I have read hundreds of management books, even more. Okay, um, and I would be not representing appropriately if I say that each book Each of these books had an impact on my life.
Right.
But this is one book, as you know, I have chosen for today's discussion because I find it very, very powerful. And I'll tell you, the 7 habits that Stephen Covey have written in this book,
Mm.
and there are a lot of powerful videos also in the YouTube
Yeah.
if you search, and then there are a lot of training modules
True.
from the Franklin Covey's Institute.
Mm.
I strongly feel connected to each of those habits from
Right.
habit 1 to habit 7. Now there's a habit 8 also,
Yeah.
but this first 7 habits are definitely something that I feel hugely connected with, and I can relate every bit of it to my day-to-day interactions. That's
Absolutely.
why I have chosen this book.
Absolutely. It's one of the most. I don't call it a book. It's actually a workbook. You
Yeah,
can
it's
apply
Bible.
it.
It's a Bible for me. It's a Bible.
Lovely.
Uh,
Lovely.
any habit, and I give training on 7 habits. So each habit is itself, I would say, an eye opener.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
if someone tells me, or anybody approaches me to deliver 7 habits in a day, I said it's impossible for me to deliver 7 habits in a day because I would not be doing justice to it.
True. True.
Each
I agree.
each habit would require at least 6 hours of training delivery.
Oh, yes, yes. And the book has got enough and more pages to talk about each habit. So we're going to go through a couple of habits through this entire conversation. So let me have the first question thrown at you. Brace up yourself, Indrani. The first one is a very powerful one, which always intrigued me also. And Stephen talks about the very powerful concept called paradigm shift. The book starts with that phrase. Why do you see this as a very powerful concept for leaders?
I think this particular word paradigm shift was coined many years back, but 2020 had taught us what paradigm shift is all about.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I don't know. I don't think when Stephen had coined this term, he he knew that COVID is coming. But everything that we have experienced
Mm,
in 2020
mm,
and beyond
mm.
is about paradigm shift.
Right.
We whether it's a way of working, whether it's a way of thinking, whether it's a way of behaving
Mhm.
socially, or whether in the corporate world, everything had experienced a paradigm shift. And
Right.
I think this particular terminology is very, very powerful and most powerful now in today's context because of
Mm.
what we have experienced in last 12 months.
Okay. And when a leader has this paradigm shift and he or she works on it, how does it help him or her?
I think it first thing is, and this is something that's my personal view, Rajiv.
Sure,
I
sure.
think paradigm shift makes you less judgmental.
Okay.
I think it's how you see things and how I see things. The
Mm.
example that Stephen has in his book is um, about I don't know whether you have read that portion, but he has an example of a kid enjoying the scenery outside the train, and the passenger getting extremely irritated that what's there to be so excited to see a boring scenery outside.
Mm.
And he goes to the father and says that, can you ask your kid to be a little silent?
Mm.
Um, and I think he says that they have just lost their mother and they
Oh,
are
yes.
not aware of it, so they are just enjoying. Another example, he says that my son was blind and he just got back the eyesight, and he's very excited about everything that he is seeing. And
Yes.
that was a paradigm shift that was actually experienced by the person who was talking. So
Mm.
paradigm shift, I think, makes somebody less judgmental.
True.
Why I am doing what I am doing
Mm.
is actually related to a lot of things. And I think the first thing is my background, my
Mm.
behavior, my
Mm.
belief, and the outcome of the reactions that I have experienced.
Lovely. And we also become very accepting of what the other person does and why he does the way he does or she does the way she does, right? Absolutely. Very, very powerful. So with that paradigm shift, let's straight away get into habit one, right? Being proactive. What is freedom of choice for you as a phrase, a very powerful phrase? and he has almost given 20-22 pages for this one habit itself, right? How can all the leaders being proactive carry their weather within themselves? And this is a powerful phrase that I love always. And I keep talking in my interventions to a lot of leaders that carry your own weather. And the example he gives is powerful. How do you see this so useful for leaders?
So I think it's the difference between reaction and being reactive and being responsive.
Hmm.
Okay, so I think when you talk about proactiveness, I think the first thing which comes to my mind is thinking ahead.
Okay.
Okay, so if you are not thinking ahead,
Hmm.
you will come with surprises,
Hmm.
and then you get into a situation of reaction.
True.
I think proactiveness comes from that angle that
Hmm.
you have to foresee what is coming. It's not easy to
Hmm.
foresee your future,
Hmm.
but if you are able to, you will be in a situation to save a lot of negative energy.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think proactiveness is something every leader should practice. And when I talk about leaders, it is not
Yeah.
the CXOs.
Right.
For me, everybody is a leader.
True.
Anybody who steps into the corporate world, starts a career, is a leader in his or her own way.
Correct.
You don't have to wait for 20 years or 25 years to reach the CXO board to become
Hmm.
a leader. You
Hmm.
will
Hmm.
never be. If you are
Hmm.
not demonstrating the leadership qualities when you are an executive, you will HR executive, you will never demonstrate the leadership quality when you become the CHRO.
I agree.
So proactiveness is something which comes with a lot of planning, and then predicting what can come, thinking ahead,
Mhm.
and going beyond the obvious. So,
Uh,
so these are the few things which I strongly feel makes a person proactive and saves a lot of time. Because if you are in a reactive mode, you are
mm,
always trying to catch the tail. So
mm.
it's a vicious cycle. If you are proactive as a leader, you are saving a lot of time,
True, true.
and you are actually in a situation to think more strategically, because
Mm,
you are not responding, okay, to a stimuli. You
right.
are actually controlling the environment.
Correct. Absolutely. Very rightly said, because he beautifully says that if you're able to carry the weather within you, then you are so independent of what's happening around you. It could be a sunny day, could be a melancholy day, could be whatever, but you are always bright, and you can throw that to the system around, right? People get just attracted and pulled towards you, isn't it? Very beautiful.
It's difficult, Rajiv.
Yeah,
uh, it's very difficult. Life throws a lot of surprises,
yeah.
but if you do have the habit, it will be easier for you to bounce back.
I agree. I completely agree. Very nice. So let's move a little deeper, right? We go into the habit too. It says begin with the end in mind, and so beautifully it talks about this private victory and public victory. The entire model is just marvelous. I don't know how this man just thought about it. Of 7 triangles, inverted and not inverted, put in one circle. I'm just amazed sometimes. कि कैसे कोई आदमी इतना सोच सकता है? That's why he's Stephen Covey, right? Now begin with the end in mind. I want to ask you this. He makes a very powerful statement, and I would love to hear from you, Indrani, helping the leaders to use this phrase, how to use the phrase, right? And you said you run workshops, so I'd like to ask you to wear the cap of a facilitator for a moment while answering this question. He says, as part of habit 2 and following habit 2, he makes a very powerful statement saying, all things are created twice.
Once in the mind.
How should leaders understand and interpret this phrase and apply it?
Yeah, thank you, Rajiv. I think that's a wonderful statement that you have made. All things are created twice, once in your mind and then
Mhm.
in reality. Uh, Begin with the end is again a very powerful statement
Mhm.
that Stephen has mentioned in his book, and I think it has also to do a lot with the backward planning.
Mhm.
Okay, so if you are not having that end in mind,
Mm.
say for example, and say for example, I take the creation. If I
Okay.
do, if I cannot imagine
Mm.
what I'm going to create, how am I going to create?
Okay.
So I think there's another quote, and I don't remember who had written it. Somebody said that, how do you make this kind of beautiful sculpture
Mm.
from this kind of stones? He said,
Mm.
I just eliminate the unwanted things.
Mm-hmm.
The picture is already in my mind.
Right, right.
So I think it's Michelangelo, but
Michelangelo. This was Michelangelo.
it's Michelangelo. But I think it is also to do with begin with the end in the mind. You have
Mm.
to have that picture in the mind, that what is it that you are going to create, and whether it is a project,
Mm-hmm.
whether it is an assignment,
Mm.
whether it is giving birth to an organization,
Mm.
whether it is taking a policy decision,
Mm.
and to have an impact, that how it is going to impact the organization.
Right.
More so in the COVID times, we are revisiting so many policies. I
Correct.
think it's very important for the leaders to see
Mm.
and to think that I have to imagine what would be the impact on the policy to the audience
Yeah.
before I actually roll it out. So
Right,
it's
right.
more about thinking ahead. Proactiveness also is thinking ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Begin with the end is also a carry forward of that proactive behavior. If you
Mm-hmm.
see, each habit is definitely interlinked. He is
Correct.
not talking about any habit which is completely out of uh, the main frame.
True.
Everything is very interlinked,
True.
and begin with the end in mind also has lot of correlation with proactiveness.
True. 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 Each habit is very sequential and kind of sits on one above the other, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But the
yeah.
beauty of the concept is you can't, I mean, you may be able to apply habit three separately, but if you're able to do habit one and two first, well, then you can easily do a three kind of a thing. So it kind of sits beautifully one on top of the other
Yes.
one.
The interesting part of this book and each habit is complete in its own way,
Yeah.
and it's also dependent. So if you want to take a training only on one habit,
Hmm.
it's sufficient in itself.
Absolutely. I can completely understand what you're saying. True, true. So, when you said created twice, what kind of went in my head is it's so right that the first creation that happens in a head gives us an opportunity to do some homework, course corrections, reimagine, iterate, reiterate, do all that stuff, right? Because once it is created the second time, then the scope to make some changes is not there because it's now live there and you can't make an error in the organization context. But the first, when it gets created, you with your team can sit and make so much of corrections, right? So it's so important that the first creation, if leaders are able to really focus, I think the second creation would be a beautiful architecture, like you spoke about Michelangelo as an example. I think very, very powerful concept. Super, super. Thank you so much. Uh, Let me move a little out of the habit and ask you something, which is again part of the habit, any which ways. Every page of the book is a habit, actually. So I can't say I'm moving out of a habit here. He talks about a very powerful concept, Indrani, and I'm going to tell you on record that I was flabbergasted when I heard this, and I never thought about this concept called emotional bank account before I read this book many, many, many years back, like you have. How do you see an emotional bank account as a very powerful concept in the current world of corporate life and management life? And how should leaders invest time in depositing and withdrawing from that account?
Um, Emotional bank account, I think, is again another term that he coined, which again is very, very uh, relatable in
Hmm.
today's world, mainly during the post-COVID times and during COVID times,
Right.
because the emotional bank account
Hmm.
talks about
Hmm.
the negative emotions and the positive emotions that
Okay.
you are putting in your life every day.
Hmm.
It is not about a month, it is not about a year, it is
Correct.
about every day. I am
Right.
happy,
Hmm.
I put a tick on my positive account. I
Hmm.
am angry, I am upset, I am depressed, I put all this goes into my negative account.
Hmm.
And he talks about the thing that when you go to bed, you have to see whether your account is positive or negative.
Right.
So it makes it so granular
Hmm.
that the emotional bank account is not a monthly affair, it's
Hmm.
not a yearly affair, It's a daily affair.
Yeah.
You have to keep your emotional account positive every day.
True.
So I think it does have a correlation. Whenever I take the sessions, definitely I give the example of the investments and all those bank statements, etc.
Yeah.
But we don't look at our bank statements every day. We
Right.
don't go to sleep with a thought like how much I have in my FD, how much I have in my savings accounts, or whatever.
True.
But Steven says that when you go to sleep every day, think that your emotional bank account is positive today. COVID has seen people getting mentally depressed.
Correct.
I think emotional bank account comes very handy during these trying times.
Right. Can you give me one experience of your life, Indrani, for the young leaders who will listen to you? One instance where you used this very powerfully in your leadership role.
The emotional bank account?
Yeah.
Oh, Rajiv, I have to use it every day. I have to be extremely motivated, even if I'm having the worst day of my life.
Right.
Because as a leader, I cannot show my distress or sadness or whatever in front of my in front of my either colleagues or in front of my team, etc. So emotional bank account, I will give you a couple of examples. If you keep it positive, say for example, in a team building exercise or in a team, if constantly positive reinforcement is a positive account that is deposited in the emotional bank account. It helps in the team synergy. And I'm using a term synergy, which will come very soon in the discussion. But in the team synergy, having a positive emotional bank account, by having a sense of gratitude towards each other, by having a sense of appreciation towards each other, by having a sense of bonding towards each other, helps the team to build more specifically today when most of the organizations are working remotely.
True.
The team building is a core thing, and I would say for the young leaders that try to reinforce what people are doing right rather than highlighting what is going wrong.
Beautiful.
In a world like ours, every day 1,000 things will go wrong. And if only one thing goes right, I think it's important for us as leaders, young, old, I'm not getting there, to highlight and reinforce that one positive thing.
Absolutely. I'm going to take a pause. Young leaders, this is a very powerful point she's making. It's all about amplifying and highlighting that one good thing that your team did, as against ticking off and exposing one not so good thing that your team member did. I think it's a very, very powerful point. Thank you for bringing that out. Guys, all of you should go and start practicing that. That becomes the fundamental crucible of success for all of you as you move in your leadership journey. So thank you so much for that, Indrani. That's a very, very powerful point. Thank you so much. Linking to this, one of the powerful habit 5, which if one does, then your emotional bank account gets tick, 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 tick. When your negative bank account gets tick, 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 right? Which is seeking first to understand, then to be understood.
To be understood.
How have you used it so powerfully in your career? Because it is not easy. All of us as human beings, we love to be heard than heard. It's very natural. But how did you work on this?
I would say that I am still in the journey of this particular habit, because this particular habit is one of the most difficult habits to imbibe, because it talks about your own personal behavior. Of course, all the habits are related to the behavior, but seek to be try to understand before you are being understood is again a very, very emotionally strong statement. We always have a tendency to judge others. We always have a tendency to tell people. In this scenario, I think it's more around the listening skills that I always emphasize, because more you listen, more you will understand. If you are not listening, if you are listening to answer, then you are not listening. if you are listening to understand, then you will actually honor the statement.
Oh, beautiful. That's a nice way of putting it. So you're listening to understand, not to answer back.
Yes.
Okay. That's a
I am
simple
not
difference, right?
I am not listening just because I have to answer you. I
True.
am trying to listen to understand what you are trying to tell me. And it's again, if you see, it's a paradigm shift. If the leaders practice this, that why your boss is telling something, say for example, a young chap has
Mm,
not done something, he's been
mm,
called, and the
mm,
boss is trying to say something. The
mm.
guy is programming in the mind that I have to answer back, rather than trying to understand why his boss is telling this.
True, true, true.
Half of the problem will get solved if you are listening to understand, not to answer back.
Yeah, yeah. And this needs a lot of self-patience and a willingness to learn, right?
Self-patience, definitely, and the willingness and the openness of the mind
Yeah.
to actually understand things from the other person's perspective
And learn.
and learn. Because we, as you rightly said, that we will always say why he or she is not understanding me.
Mm,
I
mm,
am doing everything why he or she is not understanding me.
mm,
But what the other person is going through is very
mm.
difficult to understand if you are not in the shoes of that person.
Absolutely.
And I relate this to mental health, and mental health is a very, very favorite topic of mine.
True.
And I definitely would like to highlight this,
Mm,
like especially in this context, like
mm,
try to understand why a person with a mental illness or a mental disorder is behaving,
mm.
and don't try to make him understand what you are thinking.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And this is happening in
The
corporate
special
world.
child, all of them have these challenges, right? It's so
Yes, in the
worrisome.
corporate world, Rajiv, you have no idea how people are struggling to cope up with the stress every day.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
So, and which is creating a huge amount of mental disbalance amongst the
Mm,
young executives, which is
yeah,
not good for the generation. Which is
right.
not good for the generation. A full generation cannot be suffering from mental illness.
I think leaders, I think you made a very powerful point, Indrani. I think leaders like you and others have a huge accountability on your shoulders to create an environment which is absolutely stress-free for the young leaders, isn't it? That's a huge task of all the leaders. Fortunately, unfortunately, the HR becomes the custodian or the baton leader of this entire thing in an organization, right? So it's huge. I know.
HR definitely is the flag bearer of the culture.
Mm,
I strongly feel,
yeah,
but to make the environment stress free, I think it is also important that each leader
yeah.
takes the responsibility and not outsource it only to the HR department.
I know.
Because
I like that
because
word outsource.
yeah, the HR department, because Rajiv, every problem gets outsourced to HR department.
I know. Ask me. I've been on the other side. I my God, मेरे घर में नल में पानी नहीं आ रहा, HR को फोन लगा लो, मैं क्या
Yes.
करूँगा?
HR को फोन लगाओ. Somebody has resigned. HR को फोन लगाओ. अरे HR क्या करेगा? The guy was working with you for 2 years. You didn't take
Yeah,
care, and then you call the HR to have a discussion to retain the person. But HR is not aware of the background. So that's why I
absolutely.
said that don't outsource the problem to the HR department to
Yeah,
solve. Own the problem. Make
yeah.
the organization stress-free. HR is there to help you to build the culture.
Beautiful.
HR will always facilitate to build the culture so that it is a stress-free environment.
Yeah, yeah.
But every leader should take that responsibility.
I know, I know. You know, many years back, when I was reading about motivation, etc., a very powerful statement that came. Uh, it said that a leader cannot motivate another person. I said, "What is this? We've been talking about कर सकते हैं, कर सकते हैं." Abraham Maslow के ज़माने से हम ये बात कर रहे हैं. But they said, no, a leader cannot motivate an individual, but a leader can create an environment in which the individual is self-motivated. That's such a paradigm shift. Our job
Absolutely.
is to only create that environment in which Rajiv is self-motivated. आपने वो क्रिएट कर लिया तो आई एम सेल्फ मोटिवेटेड आप डंडा लगा के मुझे मोटिवेट कर ही नहीं सकते
No, it is always, you can create an environment, you
yeah
can create positivity, you can give the confidence.
yeah
The moment you give a confidence that Indrani, go ahead, I'm with you.
mm.
Do not have a fear of consequence. That's something I always tell to the leaders and tell to my team.
Mm.
Go and do it, experiment it.
Mm.
The buzzword always in most of the corporates is innovation. You have innovation centers, you have innovation center of excellence, and all of those. But only people can only innovate when there is no fear of consequence.
I agree. I agree. For which I think habit 5 becomes the fundamental base, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So true. So true. So true. Thank you. That's a very nice perspective. I have not thought of linking habit 5 with innovation, but I think that you beautifully brought back. I'm going to go back to those pages and understand that little more from Stephen. So thank you for that. That brings us to the habit 6, and you spoke about this synergy. In an organization culture today, very many organizations are working in silos. And Jim Collins, in his book, I'm remembering now in the book Good to Great, spoke about a level 4, a kind of a matured organization, which says all functions are synergized and working and not working in silos. They work towards achieving 4 or 5 organization level strategic initiatives, right? That's a very coherent organization. And I worked in one such organization in my past. Why is this so important for success in the current context?
I think in the context of synergy, I feel that I can relate to a train.
Mm.
Okay, if all the bogies are not well oiled, if all the bogies are not moving in the same pace, with same efficiency, the engine cannot actually run the train. Okay,
Right.
so the synergy I think is very important. For an example, for example, in the corporate setup, the HR has to function, the sales has to function, the IT has to function, the finance has to function. Everybody has to function in its optimum level to get what is required from the organization. If one department falters for whatever reason, for the lack of leadership or for the lack of the right team, etc., whatever is, I'm not getting into that fault finding mode. But for whatever reason, if one of the department is not functioning, it will have a ripple effect on other departments.
True.
HR is not hiring, it will have an impact on the business.
Talent.
Right? IT is not having the right infrastructure, it will have an effect on the efficiency of the delivery. Finance is not doing the proper budgeting, it will have an impact on the organization's outcome, business outcome. Sales is not doing the sales properly, it will have an impact on the overall business performance of the organization. Customer service is not doing the right kind of service, it will have an impact. So I cannot think of an organization where one department is non-functional, yet the whole organization as a unit is super functional.
I agree. Correct. And it's so right that the beauty of the point that you made, Indrani, is all these departments are end of the day working towards achieving that one purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is the, and I always say that, and this is something that we always say, that HR and ADIA is them and us, always them and us. Why sales did not happen? In the review meet, you will always see a slide why the sales is not happening, because the hiring did not happen. The HR will always have one slide that why the hiring did not happen, because the business guys did not respond on time, etc., etc. There could be 1,000 reasons of telling why it will not work.
Correct.
But again, I come back to what I said. There should be one reason why it will still work.
True. You're right. That one reason is good enough. One reason is very good enough. Beautiful. Thank you so much. That takes me to the last question, right? One powerful bullseye advice from you, Indrani, with all the 20 plus years of experience that you have garnered, and this book that you have read multiple times and you have delivered so many workshops. One input to the budding leaders on the 7th powerful habit, sharpening the saw. What is that one advice?
Paradigm shift. I started with paradigm shift, and I think that's the most eye-opening statement that we have in the book, that the moment you have a paradigm shift to the whole situation, you start thinking from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Young leaders, whether in the corporate world or anywhere else, I think should practice the habit of paradigm shift.
Hmm.
That's
That'd be the first step towards sharpening this saw as well.
and the first step towards sharpening the saw. Yeah,
Lovely, lovely.
and that's the last habit. But again, it's like you have to have that paradigm shift to actually follow all the habits that you have.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's why this habit kind of engulfs all of the habits.
Exactly.
Yeah, even pictographically, he has so beautifully thought and put it as a circle.
Absolutely, with inverted
Yeah,
triangles.
yeah, yeah. That's a continuous
That's a
learning.
continuous thing because it is not only about one particular thing, it's continuous. Sharpening the saw is also continuous. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, I have sharpened my saw, I have upgraded myself. Last year, I
Hmm.
can survive for next 5 years. No, sharpening the saw is again a day-to-day habit like brushing the teeth.
True, true. Absolutely. I mean, I
Motivation
read
is
this
also
book
like,
for this conversation. After what I think I must have read this book some 6 years back. And thanks to you, I picked up the book and read it again for this conversation. So that's again a sharpening the saw, right? And 6 years ke baad, as an entrepreneur today, contextualization and understanding the 7 habits is very different to the way I understood it when I was a corporate leader. I've been
absolutely.
a life as an entrepreneur. So
Every
like,
time you read it, you will have a different perspective and
yes.
you will have a different paradigm shift to each situation.
Absolutely. So I'll only thank you, Indrani, for picking this book and making me read. I think more than all the guests, I'm going to be the most read person in this entire event. कि 40 किताब वापस पढ़ने को मिल जाएगा
Thank
मुझे.
you so much, Rajiv. No, no, that I also read it because I keep on reading it. I keep on seeing the videos as well. So the videos are very powerful. And Stephen makes it very, very simple. Where he talks, he
Absolutely.
makes it very simple, very, very relatable to everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on this event and spending this 45 minutes. I would say investing this 45 minutes, not spending, and doing this beautifully for us. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I hope you had a good time.
Absolutely, Rajiv. Definitely very interesting session. As I said, I never had a session which has a correlation with books. I think I have to compliment you for this brilliant idea. And I definitely would like to wish you all the best for your next sessions with all the leaders. And I would definitely keenly wait for the videos that you upload.
Absolutely. On the LinkedIn, it will keep coming for the next 2 months. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you
Currently,
once
I'm
again.
reading a book. I have to mention
Which
that
one?
currently I'm reading a book, and this is the book.
I'm making a note. Show it.
I don't know whether you can
Ah,
show.
Eat, Pray, Love. Oh, yes. Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful book.
There are two statements, very, very two strong statements in this book. I don't know whether you have watched this movie,
I have.
Eat, Pray, Love, Julia Roberts. But again, post-COVID, this is very, very relatable.
Hmm.
Ruin is a gift,
Hmm.
and ruin leads to the road of transformation.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's so
So,
powerful, huh?
how can we even think that ruin is a gift? But post COVID, if we think that ruin is a gift, because COVID, all that COVID gave us was definitely a big amount of ruin. But if we think that ruin is a gift and it leads to the road to transformation, I think it makes our life much easier and much more
Absolutely.
positive.
Absolutely. And I also had a very powerful statement that I can give you here for all others and for you also from a very powerful book called Attitude is Everything by Jeff Keller,
Ah, yeah, yeah.
in which he says every adversity comes with an equal or a more positive outcomes. I think it's a very, very powerful, very similar to what you said. Right. With
Exactly.
that, thank you so much once again. Look forward to see you sometime. Bye, and you have a lovely day ahead.
Bye. Take care.